We're live.
All
So,
right. So, namaste, Natalie Turner, and welcome to the Author Experience conversations that we have every Sunday with authors like you. And it is a pleasure having you with us. Thank you for joining us today, despite your health, which was not doing so well today.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Lovely to be here.
P- pleasure having you with us. As shared with you, the Author Experience conversations, we celebrate and promote three genres of books: self-help and personal development books, and authors like yourself who have written great books on innovation, etc. Then we also kind of have authors who have written books on socio-political and economic affairs. Then the third genre of books that we have is people who are kind of disseminating knowledge and through their books. So we focus on pure learning experiences, because that's what the Rex Karmavir platform is all about. How do we learn life, leadership, and learning to learn lessons, because that's what we focus on. So pleasure having you with us. Yeah. And several people who have joined us in the audience, thank you for joining us, and we hope you get some brilliant insights from Natalie, who's going to share with us her thoughts on innovation and the unique model that she has created to teach innovation. So, Natalie, to begin with, maybe know more about your life journey and your life story, the journey of your life. Not just about your work in innovation, but right from childhood to what you've been doing now. Do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah, how long have we got, Jerry? That's a big question, and it covers a lot of years.
Right. That's fine. We have time. We have an hour, and in case
Yes,
it
yeah.
stretches, the audience would love
Sure.
to know more about you. Not to worry. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Well, to give like a snapshot, I suppose, it's interesting, isn't it, when you reflect on your life and also you reflect on your work that you're currently doing, how you can see in retrospect parts of the red thread or the golden thread that's gone through and helped to shape you and to shape your work that you're currently doing now, which I think about a lot when I think over my life. So I'm from England. And I was brought up in the UK. I had quite an eclectic background, I suppose, quite diverse. My parents were spiritual healers and teachers, and they had an international ministry that took them all over the world. And even at the age of 8 years old, I was a street preacher, and I was sort of following in their footsteps. And they took me out of conventional school sometimes, and we would travel. And so I traveled quite a lot with them and had a real thirst, a real hunger, I suppose. That I think helped begin my quest for exploration, for adventure, the curiosity of learning about different cultures and meeting different people and seeing how different things were done. And I left after doing my A levels when I was 18. I actually was going to, initially, I was going to take a year off, like a normal sort of gap year, if you like, before going to university. And that 1 year turned into 2, which turned into 3, which turned into 4, which turned into 5 years. And I traveled for 5 years around the world. And I worked in lots of different places. I worked in Bogota, in Colombia, with street children. I worked in Manila, in Smoky Mountain, and in Cebu with the Bajau tribe, helping to build preschools and nurseries. And I had a lot of exposure, again, to very different ways of being, very different ways of living. And I returned to England, I think, far more sort of had a broader sense of the bigger issues, if you like, of what's shaping what shapes our world. And I got very, very interested at that point in politics and also in economics. And I went to university in my early 20s, and I studied politics and legislative studies. And then I worked as a speechwriter for the Labour Party for a while. And then I went to study economics and social psychology, development economics. I was very interested in developing economies and development economics. And I studied there at the London School of Economics. And it was really there that I actually got switched on to business. And I had a very good tutor, a very good teacher at that school, who was really opened up my thinking to the power of business as a transformational tool for change. And it was right at the time when a lot was happening in the market. You know, there was the whole convergence of internet technology was really starting to emerge at that point. And you know, mobile phones, you know, so that whole sort of growth of tech was really starting to become spreading around the world. So I got very interested in that, and I left and actually had my first sort of proper job, if you like, at the age of 27, working for a boutique consultancy as a researcher. And my first real work was about how are markets for education and learning being shaped by new technology. And at that point, it was really looking at CD-ROMs and intranets and those types of technology, satellite television. But it really gave me a thirst and a hunger to understand both the people side of business, but also the technological side and the social sciences around that, the psychology around that. And anyway, I had a number of different roles. I worked for British Telecom. I headed up internet strategy for internet services. And that was only a tiny little business at that point. And I had corporate roles in research agencies, working with clients to help really help them develop new products, new services, new ways of doing things. So it was quite a journey, you know, really from sort of non-governmental work, some working in not in government, but at that time the Labour Party were in opposition. And then also working in the business world. So these sort of different worlds came together, and I think that they gave me a real love for innovation, for creativity, for lateral thinking.
That's brilliant, Natalie, and thank you for sharing your life story with us, your journey of life with us. That's beautiful. I mean, you've done so many things in one lifetime, and then finally kind of made innovation your subject matter expertise and specialty. So, how would you define innovation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big word, isn't it? And
Right,
it's, you know, if you Google it, you're going to get millions or billions of hits. I
right,
have a very simple definition for innovation. It's
right,
about creating something of value out of ideas that are new to you. And
right,
even though it's quite simple, there's quite a lot going on in that. You know, first of all, there's value. There's something of impact. There's something that, you know, is being brought out into the world and having an impact, a value impact, and hopefully a
right,
positive value impact, you know.
right, right,
And then there's also creativity. There's the newness, the novelty. It's not just the normal way of doing things. We're looking at for new ideas. And then there's new to you. We do know that innovation, a lot of what we see, isn't new. It's often new ways of purposing things or ways of pulling different ideas together to create something new. And I think it is one of the most human skills. You know, it's why we're still here. And, you know, innovation and our ability to be innovative to do this is our survival skill. And now, maybe even more than ever, it's accelerating this skill set, this need for us to be able to innovate.
very nice. You know, and I'm happy that you spoke about innovation is about creating something which creates value, which creates impact, which creates a positive contribution. And you know, there's something which I wrote about innovation a few years back when we started this program called ABCDE, which we teach in schools, colleges, and now even in corporates, right? And the whole idea is that how do you kind of move from a employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset. And an entrepreneur need not be a person who just starts a venture, because it's a mindset. It's about being resourceful and not just relying on resources. It's about being being proactive and showing initiative to do something. That is what we call as a entrepreneur mindset. So you could be an employee who has an employee mindset, which is you're always being told what to do, or you could be an employee with an entrepreneur mindset who shows initiative to find ways to get things done in the right way, of course. And that's when I wrote this one small quote, and I said, the entrepreneur mindset. Many think innovation is the next big groundbreaking idea. They think wrong. Many people have big ideas but do not know how to nurture and grow it. And the reason I wrote this is because, working with several people in the corporate sector, they have great ideas, they have great strategies, they have great visions. But where it all fails is the execution and the trust to kind of unleash potential in people, because to innovate you need to allow people to fail. So I wrote that the idea for action way to learn the entrepreneur mindset is: innovation is not the next big idea, but focused and diligent execution which builds sustainability to achieve logical organic scale. Now that's innovation. What are your thoughts about this? You worked in consulting, you worked with product development. Where do you think it all goes wrong? Because there's several organizations which have fancy visions, fancy mission statements, but the execution plan and the action plan is missing. And even if it is there, not everybody in an organization knows it. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that even now, when you talk to people about innovation, they immediately think of creativity.
Right.
And, I would say creativity is one element of being innovative. It's not the only one. It's a very important one, because
Mhm.
without creativity, we don't ignite new ideas. We don't get new thinking, new solutions. So, of course, it's absolutely of paramount importance. But it's not enough. The requirement to innovate is to actually shape that idea, make
Right.
sure that idea is addressing an opportunity or a need, and also test that idea out, have that mindset of experimentation, and then be able to invest in it, to be able to put the time, the effort, the money, the resource that is required into that idea to then move it and get momentum behind it that takes it out into the world. And I think that's often where ideas fail. I call it the graveyard of ideas, that invest stage. It's often really, both whether in large organizations or even with entrepreneurs, you can have the greatest of ideas, the greatest solutions, but if you can't get traction, you can't get momentum, then you get stuck. So absolutely, I agree with you. And I think it's the encompassing of creativity and discipline, and they're difficult things, they're very different, but them coming together that creates innovation impact.
Right. In fact, in a lot of my talks on innovation, I go a step further and I always tell people in the audience that innovation is not just about coming up with the next big idea. Innovation is also about continuous improvement, the evolution of the process that you're working on. Because if that's not continuously improving and you think you have a perfect process, you miss the plot. Any insights that you want to share on this, since you also consulted and worked with several organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. I liken innovation to a scale. You've got on one end, you've got small steps of change, incremental improvement. That sort of the development of what already exists, and
Right.
particularly what's facing you today. What's your work require of you? Day-to-day innovation, thinking differently about what's right in front of you.
Right.
And then you can have right up to radical innovation or disruptive innovation or things that are really world changing. But a lot of the innovation that we do is
Right.
more at the other end, actually.
Right.
And I think it's useful for people to think of it that way, because otherwise they sort of think, well, I'm not really innovative and I'm not an innovator because I'm not doing all those other things. And I'm just doing my job, or I'm just trying to get on with life, or whatever. And they sort of have a disassociation in their own mind that separates them out. And I think that that's a fallacy, actually. I think we need to be thinking about innovating in this broader scope of things, particularly on what we're trying to do right now, today. And so, yeah, I liken this scale. I think it's a good way of looking at it.
Right. And scale is important, but like I said in my quote that I read out to you, that many innovators, many entrepreneurs aim for scale without understanding that sustainability comes first. Failing which, if you just try to scale up mindlessly, you will crash, and you will fall with egg on your face, right? Any thoughts that you want to share on this, since you worked with several entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think I think lots of things that can play within that. At the center of the model I've invented, the 6 Eyes of innovation, I have purpose. Purpose is the central anchor point, which I believe we need to innovate from. We actually need to start there rather than charging off here, there, and everywhere, going after different ideas or even different opportunities. I think having that clear sense of purpose can then help you know if what you're doing is the right thing to help you get to where you need to go. And I think that often what can happen is there can be an out of balance. It's like you can have so much energy for a particular phase of that journey of the idea. So let's say, I call it the ignite phase, that sort of idea phase where you think, yeah, I've got the idea here, and you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy in there trying to make that work. But if you don't have the balance of the other elements that ideas travel through, then you can fall over. You can have too much of one thing and not enough of others that can actually help to stabilize and also build, say, great process or whatever it might be required to make something sustainable in the long run.
Very true. And what I've seen in my work, working with several corporate houses and startups and unicorns, megacorns, and what have you, is that everybody likes to kind of think that we need to crack the big idea. And in that process, what I've seen many entrepreneurs, many employees do is they forget that the big difference is made by the small things, and they don't focus on those small things because they don't realize that the small things are actually what makes the big difference. A lot of people celebrate Steve Jobs as a great innovator, and frankly speaking, I've never found him to be a great innovator, nor have I ever used any Apple product, right? But look at Steve Jobs. If you see it, he didn't crack the next big idea, right? Because what he did is he took an MP3 player, right? What is the iPod? It's an MP3 player which is available on the streets of China for less than $10, right? And he took that MP3 player and he created a design, and he created a product which you could kind of manage with one finger. That was his innovation. And the rest, like they say, is history. The iPod led to the iPhone led to the iPad, and several other things now. Now they have Apple TV as an OTT platform. Any thoughts about that? What are your thoughts about Steve Jobs? And then I'll come to Steve Wozniak, who's the other Steve from Apple.
Well, I mean, I think that Apple have been and are an amazing, innovative company. I do think that they have gone in and disrupted certain industries too. But I agree with you that he did take something that already existed. But I think that, in a sense, that was the amazing thing about it, was doing that, and then the design element and the usability of that experience and making it a real love brand for a lot of people, I think is what, particularly in those early days. I don't know. Well, you haven't used Apple products. I'm a big Apple fan. I have everything Apple.
Right.
So
No,
I remember queuing up for hours, for those first early iPhones and just like drooling over them because they were I fell in love with them, not unlike other devices that were out at that point. So they obviously touched on something and they're still there. I mean, I know they're now looking at cars, it's Apple cars. So let's see what happens in that space.
No, and absolutely, I completely agree with you. And the reason I was deliberately provoking that thought process was because I wanted to kind of reiterate and endorse the fact that I said a little earlier, which is that the small things make the big difference. And like you also admitted that, he took an existing product and made it better. So it's the small things which make the big difference. Natalie, when I started writing around 2010, I was moved by a very definitive purpose, like you said, and you said purpose is at the core of innovation. And we created something called the Rex Karmavir Global Fellowship and the Karmavir Puraskar and Karmavir Chakra Awards that we instituted in partnership with the UN in 2008. And what we do is we celebrate unsung, uncommon, unheard, unusual heroes, people who are not awarded in many. Sorry, I lost you for a minute.
You're back.
Yes, yeah. I guess the Wi-Fi. And in that process, around 2010 is when I announced that we would start writing books called the Karma Kari series, as you can see over here. Yeah. And the Karma Kari, we tell stories of real heroes, true stories of real heroes, very ordinary people like me, or maybe several others, but who have gone for extraordinary. And when we announced it at the press launch, a journalist said to me, who is going to read about these ordinary people? People want to read inspiring stories of celebrities and movie stars and cricket stars. And I said, they don't inspire me. But if a farmer who has never gone to school or college has innovated and transformed 500 villages from wastelands into wetlands, and now students from the top universities around the world come to learn from Lakshman Singh as to what is he doing, because he's created a life of dignity, created livelihood for over a million families today, right? And if he's doing something right, that's innovation for me. And I want to tell his story so that people get inspired by him, because nobody's told his story so far. So that is what motivated me to write the books, the Karma Kari book series, as it is called. So what is your inspiration? What is your motivation to write your book? Can you share that journey with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe have a look at your book also.
Okay, so here's my book.
Right.
So it's called
That is mine, Karma Kari, and now we have the Karma Kari Kid Power series. Yes, you can innovate. So tell us
Discover
more
your
about
innovation strengths and develop your creative potential. I wrote it, well, it was published back in 2018 in London by Pearson.
Right.
And what inspired me? Well, if I go back a few years, I left the corporate world back in 2006.
Right.
And I set up my own innovation company in London.
Right.
And I later moved to Asia, to Singapore, 2010, and set it up in Singapore. Now, one of the reasons that I left the corporate world to set up my own business was because I saw a little bit about what we're talking about really now, is I saw that just getting the new product, the new service, the new whatever wasn't enough. The what of innovation, shall we say. But actually the bigger issues were more about why, purpose, but also about skills, the how, the processes, the culture, all these other things actually that stop ideas happening. So I left to set up a company that would still work with organizations to help them, to actually develop new propositions, concepts, product development, etc. But that it would also start to train their staff on how to innovate, to make innovation a replicable process, to make it a way of thinking, to help stimulate the mindsets and the skill sets. So I created this agency. And then one of my mentors at the time, he said to me, Natalie, why don't you develop your own intellectual property and create a system? Because, obviously you've been doing this sort of work for a long time. I had a lot of different clients that we were working with. So that's what I did. I created a model called the 6 Eyes of Innovation. I'll just flash it up here so you can see it.
Yes, that's very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the 6
Brilliant.
Eyes of Innovation. And I worked with a number of organizations helping them to implement the 6 Eyes into their ways of working. And then it really came out of them saying, wouldn't it be good if you had a book? Because actually, this is a really practical model. It helps to demystify this big concept of innovation and make it accessible to people. It democratizes it, if you like, a bit like your unsung heroes. You know, I believe everybody can innovate, and we do innovate. We may not even think of it that way, but as we start to really develop our consciousness around this, then we can think, actually, I am innovating and I can do this. But we have different ways of innovating. And they were around the 6 I's, which are identify, ignite, investigate, invest, implement, and improve. And so that's what they were asking, was that, can you pull it together? Can you create a practical way for people to be able to sort of dip in, dip out, have anecdotes, have stories, have lots of examples, have case studies, and also outline the skills and the mindsets on how to innovate. So that's really what I decided to do, was to sort of put it together as a book and publish it back in 2018. And the different mindsets that go with each of those I's. So we have the identify with the mindset of curiosity, and ignite with the mindset of creativity, investigate with the mindset of critical thinking, invest with the mindset of courage, and commitment with the mindset of implement, and then clever, which is the mindset which goes with improve. Hi, Jerry. I think you're back again, but you're all...
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
There seems to be some problem with the Wi-Fi today. Sorry about that, but yes,
Okay.
I heard most of it, and some part of it I'll catch up on Facebook. But that's excellent, and I'm very happy to know about the book, the IP that you created, which is to simplify innovation for anyone to learn, because that's exactly what we have done also with ABCDE, that anybody can do entrepreneurship, because it's a learnable skill and anyone can innovate. Innovation is a very important part of entrepreneurship. So do you want to tell us more about the central theme of your book and elaborate on the 6 I's?
Yeah, okay. Well, the central theme of the book is that innovation is a very necessary skill set. It's a learnable skill set, and that each of us has different strengths when it comes to innovation. So as part of, I created it before the book, but obviously it's been developed now a lot more, an assessment, an online profile for people to take to find out what is their innovation strength. What is it that they consider themselves to be good at? So here, I'm not talking about personality or motivation. I'm talking about what people consider their skills to be.
Right.
And one of the important things around this is, again, this democratization of the ability to innovate, because most people think it's just the creative people, the innovative people, and actually implementers who have a good mindset of commitment are innovators, and when implementers, people who come up high on implement on the profile think, wow, I never really thought I was an innovator. I just thought I did stuff, I just thought I took action and made things work. I didn't see myself as innovative. Whereas what the book does is says, actually, we need all these different skills. We need all these different strengths. We need diversity and collaboration to make any idea work. And so that is really the central theme, and everything hangs on that. And then I have all like different, I go through each of the skills for each of the I's. We talk about the mindsets associated with them. Then there's practical how to try this, have a go at this, so tools or ways of thinking to help to stimulate people to think differently across each of these different I's. And people can the book actually includes a free online profile. So people can go online and they can upload their proof of purchase and actually, complete the questionnaire and find out what type of innovator they are across the six I's.
So can you tell us more about the 6 I's?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got these 6 I's. I'll hold up the little thing again. And you can see that it's an interlocking model of circles. So
right.
The philosophy is that innovating isn't just a straight linear process. We don't just go step 1, step 2, step 3, step
Right,
4, out pops something innovative. Actually,
right,
it's a very iterative process. It's a journey.
right,
It's a bit like, when you're in a relay race with a baton, you're running the race and you're passing the baton on, which is like the idea, to somebody else.
right,
So we've got these 6 eyes, and there's each of them interlocked into purpose through 2 little triangles. And the triangles represent culture and process. So my philosophy is, if you want to build a strong culture of innovation, it's not just about a creative culture. It's also a culture of implementation, a culture of improvement, a culture of investment. You need these different elements playing together and supporting each other to make your
right,
ideas work.
right. And purpose is at the core.
Yeah, so purpose at the core, interlocked with the 2 triangles out into each of those eyes.
So that's the model that you've created. And I'm very happy that you're sharing this, because for my self-help and personal development books, which is called the Mojo Inspirator, we talk about 0+3 mindsets, 0+3 0+7 virtues, and 0+21 powers. And if you see the 0 mindset, virtue, and power, it is vulnerability. Do you want to kind of share about, I always say that as an innovator, you have to understand that you're vulnerable, that if you innovate, you will fail. Do you want to shed some light and share some insights about how important is failure for innovation?
Absolutely. Well, in the process of innovating, I think we can build it in to the way of the journey, if you like. So of course it can happen at any point. But if, say, in a corporate setting, you build far more experimentation, prototyping, piloting, learning into the investigate phase before you commit too much time, money, resource, whatever it might be, into whatever it is you're trying to do, then you sort of make it a way of being, because you're going to fail a lot when you're trying to trying to test things out. I
Right.
think that a lot of the time that's missed out, that testing, people just charge off into implementation with an idea and then wonder why it went wrong.
So
But they didn't really spend any time really thinking about that.
So what you're speaking about is at the drawing board stage itself, you need to create a proof of concept, try it, test it, fail, and then go out into the market. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then obviously, even when you're out, implementing something, you're still going to be in a state of testing because you're doing something new. And this is why innovating is often hard work, because we don't always have experience to fall back on. We haven't always done what we're trying to do. So there's going to be an element of experimenting, even when you're in implementation. It's not like it's like, ta-da, perfection, and there it is, and you never look at it ever again, or whatever it is you're trying to do. So I think that we need to have this mindset built in of testing and experimentation constantly. Through all of the eyes, if you like, but particularly at that stage, because that can reduce a lot of uncertainty, it can reduce risk, or at least it gives you the perception that you can go into something with your eyes open, having had a good look and a good test at what it is you might want to do. So I think, yeah, that can help if you build that into the process.
Thank you for sharing that, Natalie. And I like the words that you use. You said you're democratizing innovation, that anyone can innovate. You can innovate, I can innovate, and everyone can innovate. And I like that, because what we are doing to kind of empower the young leaders and our youth and students is teaching them entrepreneurship through our program called Mojo Inspirator Life Leadership and Learning to Learn Success Summit. That success is not about just kind of making money and fame, glory, and wealth. Success is about making positive contributions, creating value, and creating impact, which is what you started with. And you spoke about democratizing innovation, and then you spoke about the innovation strength study that you have, which is free access to anybody and everybody who buys your book. Do you want to tell us a little about this assessment that you have online? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's not, as I said, it's not a personality assessment. It's not a motivational assessment. Things can change.
Right,
It's really a self-perception of your confidence on different attributes
right,
of skills, soft skills.
right,
So for example, I'm the first to come up with new ideas.
right,
Yeah.
right,
How true is that of you? Do you think
right.
you're very strong at that or not so strong at that? You know,
Okay,
I'm good at assessing a business plan. Are you
right,
good at that or not? So it's very much discrete skills that's asking you to measure the perception of your confidence to be good at doing that. So that's one thing that we measure. The second thing we measure is how important is this skill to your work right now? Because it might not even be important to you, isn't it? And if that's, if that's the case, then great. It doesn't matter. But if it's important to you and you don't consider yourself to be good at it, then you need someone to help you. You need to be drawing on the strengths of other people, because otherwise your idea will suffer. So
right,
that's what we measure, really. We measure confidence and importance and look at the
right,
gaps between the two to help people think through, okay, is it something I want to develop? Or maybe it is something, maybe, you want to have a go at doing that skill. Or maybe it is, yeah, let's go and partner with somebody else. Let me find someone who's good at this, who considers themselves to be good at it, and then partner with them.
right. And I'm very happy that you spoke about this because, in the assessment, you're saying that, in case I don't have certain strengths, how do I find others with those strengths? And that's exactly what we teach in how to build great relationships of trust and great relationships of strengths in any teams or in any organization. And I always say this, that great leaders, great innovators don't create ideas, but they co-create ideas, which means my idea is limited. I can't think of everything. And then if we have team members, they should contribute. And are we fishing for ideas and ways to improvise from them? Any thoughts that you have to share on this?
Yeah, I think that the diversity is the lifeblood of innovation, and collaboration is, it's not an easy thing to do, to be collaborative. It sounds a bit of a soft word, but it's
Right.
not. It's
It's not.
hard work to collaborate with people, particularly if they're very different from you and they think
Right.
differently and they have different, different views and different strengths. So I
Very
think
true.
it helps in a sense to give people an objective view of themselves, because
Right.
that can then take out some of the conflict also in teams that could rise or does rise when you're working together. So I think, and also, if you're clear on your purpose of what you're trying to do as a team at the outset, then hopefully you've got more alignment when it comes to actually trying to get the ideas to work, or improving the ideas.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with what you said, that it's hard work because it sounds like a soft skill, but to create a culture of trust, you have to be able to extend trust that you're not the only one with all the ideas, right? And that calls for a lot of personal security, because insecure people are never open to other people's ideas because they feel that their security lies in being the ideator and that person who kind of creates ideas with excellence, without realizing that our ideas could be very limited because we've not taken the thought process and the feedback and the analytical thoughts of others, right? I'm sure you would agree with that because you consulted with a lot of organizations and products, and you must have seen that in a lot of places. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is very much about, one of the things that companies like about the assessment is it gives them some data. It
Right,
gives them a starting point. It's like a mirror. Of course, there's no absolute truth in this. It's a perception. Yeah, it's a perception of what people think about themselves. And then we can collectively aggregate the data. We can look at the teams and the team strengths and what's important to the team. And what's good about it is at least it starts a conversation, at least it helps to sort of, sort of open it up, make people be able to interact and have very open conversations about themselves that they probably wouldn't do otherwise. also to see what their blind spots might be. So for example, I've worked with teams of, say, igniters, and there's a lot of igniter type people in the team, and then they realize that they're really low, say, on implement, and then and yet they need to implement some stuff, and they think, well, actually we need to be really thinking about how we're going to work out who does what, because otherwise we're just going to have a great time coming up with loads of ideas and not actually get anything done.
True.
So I think that's one of the strengths of this sort of approach, is to at least give people a mirror back to themselves, and be able to help them have something that's robust, analytical, that they can then sort of springboard off with in conversation with each other to
Right.
improve how they work.
So what you're saying is that, if you are secure enough to kind of have conversations around innovation, you would get many more ideas and ways to make an idea robust, rather than just fishing for ideas or brainstorming ideas which are not really important to the process. Have I articulated that in the right way?
Yeah. And I think too, if you've identified your opportunities and you're clear on your purpose, and you have sort of a strategic frame about, okay, this is where we need to be looking, then
Right.
you can also help channel the energy of a team on where they should look. Because, I mean, I've worked in corporate incubators before, like these little sort of cozy departmental teams where you come up with loads of ideas, and you're basically an idea generator for the organization. And
Right.
a lot of the time they will have a huge disconnect to the bigger part of the organization, and they were like separated out because
Right.
there wasn't necessarily a good strategic frame for where
Right.
we were searching and what we were looking. And most of these were actually shut down.
Right.
They've just became a resentment between the mothership of the big organization and the smaller department. So I think some of these dynamics are really important to look at with regards to how organizations design themselves so that they can have a clear direction on where to actually, where to look, where to hunt, where to focus on different ideas and
Right.
opportunities. Yeah.
Right. And thank you for sharing that, Natalie. And that's very important, because like you rightly said, in a lot of brainstorming sessions, and I, as a leadership coach and consultant, am invited to facilitate some of the sessions. And I start the meeting by saying, whenever you're pitching an idea or discussing an idea, let's not just focus on the agenda, but let's focus on the outcome of this meeting. That is your idea truly relevant and impacting the outcome that we hope to end this meeting with today? And if it's not impacting that, please don't be possessive or passionate about your ideas, because it's not related to the outcome. And that's what I start the meetings with, because otherwise everybody gets very passionate about their ideas and pushing their ideas forward. Very
Yeah.
true. Before we close on the book, I wanted to show us your diagram again, the illustration that you showed, and you spoke about mindsets related to each of those eyes. Now, what I wanted to explain is, why is purpose at the core, and what are the mindsets of identify, ignite, improve, etc.
Yeah. Okay, so purpose is at the core, because what I believe, I believe when I created it, I believe even more now, years and years later, is that innovation isn't necessarily always good. Yeah, as in, it's just because you're innovative doesn't make it good. Just because you innovate, what you create might not be good. It might not have a good impact. So it's not just about let's all be innovative. It's
Right.
let's be innovative and purposeful about what we're innovating. And
Right.
let's really think through why we're innovating and what we're actually trying to do. And is what we're trying to do going to have a positive effect on people, on the planet, and on the performance of what it
Right.
is you're trying to do? So that's why it's at the center. I want people to think about that first.
Okay, very nice. And
Before
I,
they
I
go
like that. I
off.
completely endorse that school of thought. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's why I put it there. And then the mindsets. So each of the I's obviously have an I that they start with, and each of the mindsets have a C.
Okay.
So identify has the mindset of curiosity. So we
Very
need
nice.
that open-mindedness, sort of, that expansive way of thinking when we're looking for opportunity. Ignite has the mindset of creativity.
Very
That's where we
nice.
really need ideas and solutions. Investigate has the mindset of critical thinking. We need to be objective. We need to be able to look at things, analyze things, think them through. Very different mindset to creativity and to curiosity. And then invest has the mindset of courage. At Invest, we've got to step out. So you need to have that mindset of, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step out. I'm going to say yes or no, as it may be, depending on what it is that you're going to do. But you're going to need courage to be able to do that. And you need a mindset of courage. And then implement has the mindset of commitment, hard work. You've got to stick at it. You've got to be resilient. You've got to see things through. It's up and down. There are bad days, all of that type of thing. And then lastly, improve has the mindset of being clever. Clever, why? Because a lot of people miss this stage out, a bit like you were saying earlier, we're trying to do other things without even looking at what we've got in front of us, how we can improve it, how we can do things differently with what we've already got. So they are the different mindsets associated with each of the I's.
Very nice. And I'm very happy that you shared that in such detail, in a very simple way, that the purpose is related to the I's and the C's. And, you would see over here in Mojo's Inspirator, we have the third virtue. The first virtue is enlightenment. Second virtue is temperance. Third virtue is knowledge and wisdom. And knowledge and wisdom has three powers: curiosity, creativity, and love of learning, which means, are you continuously learning? Because that's related to your identify, ignite, and improve. Are you continuously learning to improve? And that's what you're calling as clever. And then, of course, critical thinking is an integral part of it. If you see this triple loop, it's what is called this triple loop learning and learning circles, right? And that's why we've broken it down into groups of three. And courage is very important, because courage is again about bravery, perseverance, and honesty. So courage is a virtue which has three powers: bravery, perseverance, and honesty. Perseverance means you will never give in, you will never give up. Very important for an innovator. You will try until you break through. And of course, commitment is an overall part of it, which is about the grit, the resilience, the commitment that you bring to the table. So it's very much in sync with our Mojo's Inspirator learning. And I'm very happy to have you as a missionary passiopreneur and a mentor in residence for our learning that we are packaging for young students and young leaders, because they may not be getting jobs now, because there are no jobs out there, no career options out there. So the idea is to tell them that, hey, you can become an entrepreneur, you can become a missionary passiopreneur like Natalie and several others, because it's a learnable skill. And I'm very happy that you shared about how innovation can also be learned by anybody and everybody. You know, that said, there is something which I want to provoke a thought again with now. And this is something about the other Steve from Apple, which is Steve Wozniak, who had, visited India around 3 years ago. And Steve Wozniak said that creativity in the Indian education system is missing because parents, educators, schools, colleges are very focused on expensive degrees, high percentages. And in that process, what we do is we make children study by rote, memorize by rote, and we don't really contribute to their learning skills or learning to learn. We don't teach them to learn. We teach them to study so that they can pass their examinations and get a degree and then get a job. So what we call in our Mojo's Inspirator and the Rex Karmovir circles, we create career mules. Mules are beasts of burden who are created. They're a hybrid between the donkey and the horse, and they were created as beasts of burden. So that's what we are doing, not just in education systems in India, but I would say education systems around the world. Steve, of course, targeted India because he was on a visit to India, and he said that Indian education system, does not teach creativity. But I think this applies even to the United States of America. It also applies to UK, except for a few progressive countries which teach you how to learn rather than study by rote. What are your thoughts and insights on this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree to a large degree that, it's interesting right now, I think, because the whole educational paradigm is really being shaken. Now, of course, I think going to university and getting a degree or whatever is fantastic too. I have 3 degrees. I'm glad I've got them. I'm glad I enjoy them, but I didn't do it the conventional route. I didn't go at 18. I spent 5 years going out in the world and getting loads of other experience. And then I had a year working in Parliament as part of that. So it was always sort of combined with experience. But I think that now we need, because we can access knowledge so fast. Traditional education, I think, was trained to teach you, to remember things. So you would really study hard to memorize so that you could articulate and write essays and things like that. But what we need now are different types of skills, because the knowledge is so easily accessible. You just have to Google or look on, Wikipedia or look on whatever. You can find anything about everything, and things are changing so fast as well with regards to current knowledge. So I think that the more that we can build in experiential learning, particularly around innovating, because you can't learn innovation just from books. I mean, books help. I've written one. You've written books. I mean, of course, books help, because they help to give knowledge, but it's more the practical aspect of having a go, of getting out there, of trying it out. You don't learn courage from a textbook. You learn courage through getting out and falling over and picking yourself up again and having another go. So it's very much that we do need these different paradigms of experience to enable people to be able to learn, whether they're young people or older people. Yeah.
And I'm very happy you shared this because, if you see our courage and bravery, symbols, we have a giraffe and a turtle sticking their necks out. Because without sticking your neck out and trying to do something, you cannot learn innovation. Without failing, you cannot innovate, because to innovate, you need to experiment. And when you're doing something experimental, you will fail. And you need to stick your neck out, because without sticking your neck out, you cannot make progress. So courage is very essential for innovation. And I completely agree with that. And that, I think, is what modern education systems are lacking in. I completely endorse what you said, that schools, colleges, university degrees are important because they contribute to a holistic learning. And I wouldn't agree with some people like Gary Vee and Elon Musk who talk about how schools and colleges are redundant because you can learn everything from Google. Well, what you learn on Google is data. It's not even knowledge. I wouldn't even call it knowledge, because until and unless you don't know how that knowledge has to be applied, that knowledge won't work for you. It's what Gaite said, that knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. And if we are not doing, if we are not taking action on that learning, then that knowledge is futile. It's wasted. You know. So
And I
you
think it's also the critical thinking that needs
absolutely,
to be
and that I think is where
thick.
the what we are doing, we are taking into schools that critical thing, because that is what we are calling as character rooted learning. Because all your resources, all your budgets are useless if you don't know how to be resourceful with whatever resources you have. And absolutely, that's where critical thinking comes in very important, because how can you apply that thought process to create something out of nothing? That's what entrepreneurs and innovators do. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's interesting. I remember years ago, one of the courses I did do in Hawaii many years ago was on presuppositional thinking, how to understand what you think and how to understand the thinking of others so you can analyze it to be able to challenge it. Very challenging program, really. I mean, I wasn't taught that at university in the UK, but it was something that I thought, wow, if this was taught everywhere, people would
Right.
really know how to actually analyze their own belief systems, take them apart, deconstruct, understand why they think what they think, and then be able to do that for other people. I think, you know, that also helps. And also in our world now, where we have so much information flying at us all the time, how do you have a sieve in your own head to be able to sift it through and say, this is
Absolutely.
logical, this isn't logical? You know, a thing is a
You have to
thing.
be able to process it, you have to be able to apply it, and you have to be able to kind of, you know,
Yeah,
create a radical outcome out of it. And
yeah.
I think that's where critical thinking comes in. And, you know, that's what, you know, you and I, we are on the same page, because all the C's that you spoke about is what we are teaching in the Mojo Inspirator learning that we are taking into schools and colleges now, because these are concepts that are not taught in the top universities or the Ivy League universities like Harvard or the and IITs of India. So we are complementing their textbook education with real life worldly education through, and bringing it to life with true stories of people who have innovated without really going to school and college, right? Because you have Lakshman Singh, you have another lady who used to sell vegetables on the street to save money, and then she has built a huge hospital in a place called West Bengal, which is in the eastern part of India. And you know, one of the insights I got when you were speaking about purpose, the 6 I's and the 6 C's, is that, you know, I should share some of the stories with you, because around the stories we can actually package the innovation learning,
Right.
and bring the book to life, which could be the part two and the next version of your book. And I'll write to you separately on that. You know, to conclude, there are many people watching on Facebook Live, and there are many of our Rex Karmavir Global Fellows, Rex Karmavir Youth Fellows, and others in the audience who are aspiring to write a book and get it published, right, and be a published author. You're published by Pearson from UK. And do you want to share with them the process from writing to getting your book published, and how they can learn from you?
Wow. Yeah. Well, in a nutshell, it's interesting because with nonfiction, if you want to go a traditional route, which is I wanted to do traditional publishing, I didn't want to do self-publishing. I wanted to go with a big global publishing house. So I don't know anything about the self-publishing route. And I know there are lots of models now to be an author. There's all different hybrid models that you can do. So the route I took isn't, you know, the only route. I think that's the first thing. But the route that I chose, basically, you approach publishers. Luckily, I had a friend who'd published with Pearson, and she recommended me to her editor. So I had a connection straight away. So obviously that helped. But still, then you're in the door. You've got to then have something worthy, I suppose, of being published.
Right.
So then you go through a proposal process. And it was interesting what Pearson really wanted, and it may be the same for other traditional publishers these days, is some of that proposal is about the content of what you're going to write about. The rest of it is how are you going to get it out into the world? How are you, what networks do you belong to? How are you going to publicize? How are you going to be a PR agent for yourself, a marketeer? So having those skills is very, very important to publishers now, because they have to sell your book. And the more you can help them, the happier they're going to be.
Yeah.
So that's the proposal. And then they ask you for the first chapter. Once you're through the proposal stage, ask for the first chapter. That's then pitched to an editorial board. They then decide, yes, they'll contract you or not. And then they give you a deadline, and then you then have to deliver against the deadline. Then you go through iteration after iteration with different types of editors. And the whole process took me about a year from start to finish, from an idea through to finished on the shelf product.
Wow. And thank you for sharing that. So to articulate those thoughts and the insights for all our young budding entrepreneur writers out there, is write a great book, then find your 6 degrees of separation with publishers, but write such a book that inspires them to publish it. Self-publishing is an option, but a lot of people nowadays on Facebook, they put I'm an author, and then somewhere you read that their book is self-published, and probably kind of 50 copies have gone to family and friends. That's not what traditional publishing is all about. Traditional publishing is about promoting your book being on the bookshelves, not just having 50 books with family and friends. So to do that, you have to be diligent and put in hard work to write a great book. It took Natalie a year. It takes me around 3 years, because there's a lot of research involved in researching the true stories of all these real heroes. So each of my book takes around two and a half to 3 years. So thank you for sharing with Natalie. And to conclude, Natalie, can we have you sharing some of the thoughts that you've written in your book by reading a couple of paragraphs or chapters from your book?
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I've got a couple of little pieces I thought that I would share. Let me have a look.
You can show us the book again so that all the people in the audience can go on to Amazon and buy the book. Yes, you can innovate to learn how purpose is linked to the 6 I's and the 6 C's. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so this one is from the chapter on Ignite, which is all about with the mindset of creativity. And I'm talking about, I go through each of the skills. So I'm talking about skill number 2, which we're measuring on the assessment, being able to challenge assumptions. So a little bit what we've been talking about. When I was a little girl, I used to love playing in the kitchen while my mum cooked dinner. I would empty the cupboards and take out the pots and pans and plastic bottles and containers and start to play. In my mind, the pots and pans were starships and rockets and all manner of imaginary things. Gradually, I stopped playing. I grew up. I had neatly filed into my brain that pots were for cooking. They were not starships after all. As children, we make sense of the world by creating associations or schemas. These create the basis of branching of our neurons in our brain. As we learn new things, our neurons develop like a tree and new branches are formed. The brain automatically sorts and files information according to these schemas. As we grow older, we're using the same pathways time and time again that become larger and deeper. The flow of new ideas starts to slow down, but the flow of information speeds up. The brain becomes faster at classifying information by recognition and requires less and less reflection. This is why many adults find it hard to be creative. Where there are great benefits to being able to look at an object and interpret its use in multiple ways, I would look silly now if I thought a pot was a starship. Therefore, when it comes to challenging the way we think, the deep neural pathways which allow us to process the world in a more efficient manner simultaneously stop us from thinking differently.
Very nice, Natalie, and thank you for reading that out, because in a lot of homes, in a lot of schools, when children ask questions, they are told not to ask questions, without realizing that by telling them not to ask questions, you kill their curiosity, which is the key trigger of learning, love of learning, and learning to learn. So I'm very happy that you shared that. For all our educators and parents who are watching this program, please do not kill your child's curiosity, because curiosity and creativity are the prime triggers of innovation. So please help them to ask, please enable them, empower them to ask more questions. Let them question everything, because that's how you learn. To remember what Alfred Einstein says in his autobiography, that I have no particular genius. All I do is ask questions. So don't stop them from asking questions, and learn from Natalie's example. Any closing insights, Natalie, before we conclude?
Well, I had one other one. Do you want to hear that?
Surely, go ahead.
Okay, so this is from the implement
Right.
part of the book on committed. And this is in a way my closing words, yeah?
Right.
Imagine you are on a small boat with a group of people. The sun is shining and the water is calm. Laughter fills the air as you paddle down the river. Suddenly, the boat starts to rock and then spins around. You hit the rapids and the laughter stops. Soaked from the spray and with a sense of exhilaration, you manage to steer the boat through the rapids, unaware that you have drifted off course and are heading straight to the edge of a waterfall. This one is going to be tough. Yet, we pick up the paddle and we try again. There are days when we feel really low. There are days when we want to give up. But who we are in the face of disappointment often can determine whether we succeed or fail. It can be lonely, and most likely you will be misunderstood. Until you are a success, that is, and then you will be praised. Being on the edge of something new, whether working inside an organization trying to influence your peers or working as an entrepreneur, most people will see you as a maverick, not quite fitting in with what they see as important or necessary. Resilience and agility are the current buzzwords of our time, but how do you teach such qualities? The only way is to have experiences. You cannot learn this from a textbook or a course. You've got to go through the highs and lows of a life fully lived. You have to face disappointment, feel it in your bones, and come out on the other side feeling stronger. You have to have faith in your vision and in your self-belief. You have to have confidence, oodles of it. And if one door shuts, you open up another one. You do not give up.
Very nice. And I'm so happy that you shared that, because I completely agree with this. The Mojo Inspirator books are a series of books. And one of the books in the series is called Karishma, the Miracle. And the concept is that the miracle is not in any church or any temple or any monastery, but the miracle lies within you. And the premise of the book is that in life, at some point and many, all of us break. But when we break, do we choose to give up and break down? Or do we choose to persevere and be committed to break through? And that's exactly what you're speaking about, because to implement something and make the idea come to life, you need to be committed. You need to persevere. You need to be resilient. You need to have a lot of grit. You need to have a lot of passion. And you have to be able to, because passion basically is a Latin word, which comes from the word passio, which basically means suffer. You're ready to go through that suffering. You're ready to go through that mill, drill, and grill. You won't give up. No obstacles will stop you. No hurdles will break you. And I think that is exactly where our thoughts resonate. And I'm so happy that we had you on this experience and this conversation, because we learned so much from you. Thank you for all the learning, Natalie, and keep doing the great innovative work that you're doing. And thank you so much for making the time to be with us today.
Thank you very much, Jerry, for inviting me.
And we will soon send you out an invite to be one of our missionary passiopreneurs, so that the young students can learn more deeply from your 6 I's and 6 C's and how purpose is at the core of it. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
See you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.